Nim, thanks. We had the opportunity to walk around this morning and take a look at some of the, I think, most expansive resources in the country from the standpoint of any state's ability to deal with an event. More importantly than the pieces of equipment are the men and women who operate them. The finest emergency management people in America are standing within a 150-yard radius of where we are right now. I'm really proud to get to work with them. Over the course of the last even 30 days, we have seen them in their activities. We've sent them out on multiple missions. Mary Fallon, the governor of Oklahoma, she called me last week and wanted to pass on her great thanks for Texas Task Force 1, the work that they did and that tragedy and more in the surrounding areas in Oklahoma. We saw them up in Johnson and Hood County, in Ellis County, and close to the city of Ennis over the course of the last 30 days as well. We just have been notified about they may be required over in neighboring Arkansas with a flood that's occurring as we speak. So day in and day out, there are just dozens of state and nonprofit agencies. It is not just about the federal government. We got great private sector partners who make all of this work. So you saw Suncoast over here. We know HEB. We see Walmart. We see Home Depot. Lots of private sector folks that I haven't named who are wonderful partners that are part of this puzzle that is put together to create the finest emergency management response team in the world. We are at the start of another hurricane season. That's kind of our kickoff, and the reason we do this to remind people about the threat of a hurricane along the Gulf Coast. Early estimates are that this is going to be a very active hurricane season, but even the quietest hurricane season holds the potential for creating a catastrophic event. And because even the smallest of one of these storms can kill, can destroy communities and dislocate people from their homes. And experience has taught us that there is absolutely no such thing as a little hurricane. As these new hurricanes, or I should say as this new hurricane season approaches, one of the most important elements of our response starts with the public, making sure that you have a plan. You've got an emergency plan already thought through. You've got a supply kit at hand. You have an evacuation route that you have thought through, that you know will work for you and your loved ones. We also need to remember that our coastal citizens are not the only ones in Texas who need to pay attention as a hurricane approaches. A lot of times the hurricane sparks some very severe storms across the state, and you have flash flooding, you have tornadoes. And again, these recent tornadoes in North Texas and Oklahoma are stark reminders of the devastation that severe weather can impart upon our citizens. When these storms approach, people need to pay attention. They need to make informed choices to stay safe. And there is a website that I would like to inform the public about. It's called Texas Prepares, TexasPrepares.org, TexasPrepares.org. And you can learn more about the preparation side of it at that particular website. And as citizens are preparing, so are we, through practice, through simulation, and I suppose stimulation as well. But the men and women that are involved in all of these exercises become very efficient and effective emergency response teams. And I've said before, there's nobody that I would rather have on the end of a phone call than Nim Kidd, and all of the resources that he has at hand and the men and women that he has. Nobody in America would I rather, when I pick up that phone, to have him on the other end of that line. And Chief, I just want to say to you and the Texas Department of, or I should say your Division of Emergency Management, thank you for all the things that you all have been doing. This team puts in some pretty long hours, and they have saved untold numbers of lives over the course of the years. And when these storms pass, it's the restoration side of this. From my perspective, has been one of the most satisfying things. How fast, how smart, how efficient we're able to deal with it, and getting faster, smarter, more efficient is our goal. Sometimes I get frustrated that our counterparts in Washington, D.C. make it a little more difficult for us. It wasn't but about a year ago that the C-130s that were stationed in Fort Worth, Texas, the feds were going to move them to, I think, Montana, and which would have been a devastating move from my perspective, and southern tier state governors thought the same thing. We all worked together and were able to bring some sensibilities to that decision-making process, and we were able to keep these 130s in Fort Worth. And I really want to say thanks again to Congresswoman Kate Granger. She was instrumental in being able to intercede, and so you know, and now we've got this sequestration going on, and we got the Texas Army National Guard and our Air Guard that are facing some mandated furloughs. And again, these are individuals who remain very committed to our state. We need them on the job full time. And this is something, frankly, that Washington needs to rectify. We shouldn't be having to bear a greater burden because the President and Congress can't get together and sensibly find a balanced way to deal with the budget issues in this country. But despite all of that, I know for a fact they're going to be ready to deal with whatever gets thrown at this state. That's the kind of people we have. Again, whatever Mother Nature throws at us, we're going to be ready for it. So with that in mind, I just want to say that 26 million people in this state, thank you. Thank you for the work that you do, for the sacrifice you make, and for the comfort that you give to the people of this state. So,
thank you, Chairman. So really we want to wrap this up into three things. The first is to get a kit. The second is to make a plan. And the third is to be informed. Our three goals here are raising awareness, collaboration, and testing of communications equipment. It doesn't take a hurricane, even though we're entering hurricane season. As the governor said, the last 30 days have been pretty rough around parts of our state. Take this time to make sure you and your family are prepared. Last Saturday morning at 6 o'clock, my bedside weather radio went off for a tornado warning directly over my home. None of us are immune. You have to be prepared. And I'll tell you, my wife and kids and dog performed flawlessly. Now, they couldn't get me into the shelter because I was out running around, but that was a different story. But the truth of the matter is, we're all have to be ready and all have to be prepared. None of us are immune. I asked the media to help us broadcast this message far and wide. We've got to have all three parts of our communication model. The first responders and leaders that you see around giving the message, you broadcasting the message, and a prepared community that responds to the message. What you've seen in North Texas in the last 2 years over the tornadoes is a prime example of how that model can work well. And as you know, collaboration is the key to success. We're here to work with our agency partners. They know their jobs. My job is to make sure they know every other agency's jobs as well, to make sure that we are communicating and collaborating flawlessly. And the men and women of state agencies and local governments. What you don't see here today are the men and women of the local governments that are supporting the state, not just to be ready for their response in their community, but to respond statewide. And I know there are many local government employees here today. If you are, would you raise your hand? I know you guys from the Texas Task Force 1, the Emergency Medical Task Forces, part of the TIFMAS teams that deploy. Thank you all for being here, and thank your mayors and county judges and city managers for their support. The last piece is the communications model. If you read after-action reports like I do, you know communications or lack thereof is the #1 fall guy. Communications always gets blamed. And that's why you see so many mobile command posts that are here today, because we owe it to our citizens to make sure that we can communicate at every level and every time. And I thank you for your attendance, and I'll turn it back over to the governor.